Every time Sarah woke up in the middle of the night, she could smell it. Smoke, burnt wood, melted plastic. Even 3 months after the fire, even living in a completely different rented house, the smell was still there. Or maybe it was just a memory. But what she couldn't get out of her head, what woke her up in a cold sweat every morning, wasn't the fire. It was the dog, Jasper, the puppy that saved her life. And that disappeared that same night. Sarah was 58 years old and lived alone in a small coastal house near Wellington, New Zealand. She was a retired nurse. She had spent 32 years caring for people during the worst days of their lives. But when she herself needed help, when she lost her husband to cancer 4 years earlier, when her children moved to Australia and stopped calling, when the house became too quiet and the days began to weigh like lead, it was a dog that appeared. Jasper. A brown and white mongrel, with deep brown eyes and a calm demeanor, whom she had adopted from the local shelter 2 years earlier. He didn't bark much. He didn't jump. He just stayed close, as if he knew she needed company, not noise, and it was Jasper who saved her that June night. Sarah had gone to bed early, exhausted after a typical day. She didn't hear the short circuit in the old kitchen wall wiring. You didn't hear the crack. He didn't see the spark that ignited the curtain. But Jasper heard, and when the smoke began to rise down the hallway, when the fire was already devouring half the house, Jasper didn't bark. He growled, grave, urgent, and then he did something he had never done before. He grabbed her sheet with his teeth and pulled. Pulled hard. Sarah woke up confused, coughing, her eyes burning. She didn't understand what was happening until she saw black smoke coming through the gap in the bedroom door. Jasper barked once, loudly, and ran toward the front door. Sarah stumbled after him, her throat burning, her lungs begging for air. She could barely see. But Jasper was in front of her, guiding, barking, waiting for her to follow. When Sarah finally crossed the front door and fell to her knees on the wet lawn, she turned around and called out his name. Jasper. Jasper, come here. Come here, boy. But Jasper didn't come. She saw his silhouette standing in the doorway, looking at her, and then he turned and ran back inside the burning house. Sarah screamed. She stood up. She tried to run after him. But at that moment, the flames exploded through the windows and the heat wave threw her back to the ground. The neighbors were already calling the fire department. Someone held Sarah by the shoulders. She cried, screamed his name, begged someone to go in there and get the dog. But no one could. The fire was too big, too fast. When the firefighters finally put everything out, it was already dawn. The house was nothing but ashes and charred structure. Sarah sat on a thermal blanket on the sidewalk, shivering, her eyes swollen from crying. One of the firefighters approached her carefully. He said they searched. They said they turned everything upside down. But they didn't find the dog's body. Nothing. Sarah didn't know if this was hope or torment. She wanted to believe that Jasper had escaped, that he was lost somewhere, scared, hurt, but alive. She spent the following weeks searching. She put up posters on lampposts. She went to the local animal shelter every day. She asked the neighbors. She drove through the streets of the area shouting his name out the car window. But nothing. Jasper had vanished like smoke, and Sarah began to sink. She had already lost her husband. She had already lost her children to distance. She had already lost her house. But losing Jasper was different, because Jasper didn't leave. He didn't die of illness. He didn't move to another country. He chose to return. He chose to walk into the fire, and Sarah couldn't stop asking herself why. What was he trying to save in there? What was more important than his own life? She no longer slept. She didn't eat properly. She just kept looking at the photo of Jasper on her cell phone. The one she had taken of him lying in the sun in the backyard, his tongue sticking out, his eyes shining in a way that now seemed prophetic, as if he already knew he wasn't going to stay forever. 2 months passed. Sarah had given up. She no longer put up posters. She no longer called the shelter. She just lived, automatically. She woke up, had coffee, stared at the wall, slept, repeated. Until one Thursday afternoon, the phone rang. It was a woman from the Lower Hutt Animal Shelter, a neighboring town about 25 kilometers away. Her voice was hesitant, almost apologetic. She said, "Sarah, are you still looking for a dog named Jasper?" Sarah felt her heart stop. Yes, I am." The woman took a deep breath on the other end of the line. We think we found him. But before I tell you what Sarah discovered when she arrived at that shelter, subscribe to the channel and leave a like, because what's coming next is the kind of thing you only believe when you see it. Sarah could barely drive to Lower Hutt. Her hands trembled so much on the steering wheel that she had to pull over twice just to catch her breath. She didn't know if it was fear or hope, or both. Because what if it wasn't Jasper? What if it was just a similar-looking dog? What if she had to look into a stranger's eyes and feel everything crumble again? But what if it was him? What if Jasper had been alive all this time, miles away, and she didn't know? Guilt was already tingling in her chest before she even arrived. When Sarah entered the shelter, the woman who had called, Claire, a volunteer in her 40s with gray hair tied in a ponytail, was waiting at reception. She smiled, but it was a tired smile, the kind that carries bad news disguised as kindness. Sarah, thank you for coming so quickly. I need to explain something to you before you see him. Sarah felt her stomach churn. Is he all right? Is he alive? Claire nodded but looked away. He's alive, but he's not alone, and the situation is a little complicated. Claire led Sarah down a narrow corridor to the back of the shelter where the larger kennels were located, those reserved for special cases. And it was there, in the last kennel in the corridor, that Sarah saw him. Jasper. It was him. Without a doubt, the brown and white fur, the dark patch around his left eye, the drooping ears, the way he sat with one paw tucked in. Sarah covered her mouth with her hands. Tears came before any sound. Jasper slowly raised his head when he saw her, and he stood still. He didn't run. He didn't bark. He just looked, as if he were apologizing for something she didn't yet understand. Claire opened the kennel door, and Sarah crawled in on her knees. Jasper, my boy, you're alive. She stretched out her arms, but Jasper didn't move. He looked at her, then looked back at the shadow in the corner of the kennel. And that's when Sarah saw him, a man, sitting on the cold concrete floor, leaning against the wall, his eyes closed, his white cane lying beside him. He was elderly, probably in his 70s, with thin white hair, his face marked by deep wrinkles and weariness. And Jasper was between him and Sarah, like a guardian. Claire crouched beside her and whispered, "That's Tom. We brought him here yesterday because he didn't want to be separated from Jasper. He says the dog saved his life." Sarah blinked, confused, still trying to process. Saved? How could she have saved him? Claire sighed. Tom lives alone on an isolated rural property near Wainuiomata. He's blind. He lost his sight about 5 years ago. On the same night as the fire, he fell inside the house. He hit his head on the corner of the kitchen table. He was unconscious. When he woke up, he was disoriented, bleeding, unable to get up. He screamed for help, but no one heard. His property is far from everything. No neighbors, no strong cell phone signal. He thought he was going to die there. But in the early morning, he heard it. A dog barking, scratching at the door. He didn't have a dog. He didn't have anyone, but the barking didn't stop. And then he felt it. A warm snout on his face, a tongue licking the dried blood from his forehead, and a force pulling him by the sleeve of his shirt. Sarah looked at Jasper, who was still standing motionless, his eyes fixed on her, but his body shielding the man behind him. Claire continued. Tom managed to grab onto the dog. He didn't know where the animal had come from, but he clung on, and the dog guided him through the house to the landline phone in the living room. Tom managed to dial 911. The ambulance arrived 2 hours later. The paramedics said that if he had stayed like that any longer, with the head injury and his age, he probably wouldn't have survived. But when the paramedics arrived, the dog had already disappeared. Tom begged them to search. He said he needed to thank them. He needed to know who it was. But nobody found anything until the day before yesterday. Claire crossed her arms as if she were also trying to understand. Tom placed ads on local radio stations, spoke to everyone he knew, asked for help to track the dog. And then a woman who works here at the shelter heard his description and remembered a dog that had come in 2 weeks ago. Found on the road between Wainuiomata and Lower Hutt, skinny, with cuts on his paws, exhausted, but without a registered microchip. We tried to find the owner, but no one showed up, until Tom came here. And when he entered that room and called his name, Jasper ran to him as if he had waited his whole life for this. Sarah felt something break inside her. She looked at Jasper, at Tom, and back at Jasper. "But he's mine," she whispered, her voice cracked. "I adopted him 2 years ago. He lived with me. He saved me from the fire." Claire nodded slowly. "I know. We scanned him this morning and found the microchip. The registration is in your name. But Sarah, there's something you need to know. The microchip had a previous registration, older, from 7 years ago, and the name that appears there is Thomas Caldwell." Sarah looked at the man in the corner of the kennel. "Tom," she said softly, almost voicelessly. "Are you Tom?" The man opened his empty eyes, turning his head toward her voice. "Yes," he replied, his voice hoarse and broken from crying too much. "And Jasper was mine before he was anyone else's. But I had to give him to the shelter when I lost my sight. I couldn't take care of him properly anymore. I thought he would find a better family, a better home, someone who could give him what I couldn't anymore." He paused, his voice faltering. "But it seems he hasn't forgotten me." Sarah was paralyzed. "Jasper saved her, and then he went back to save the man who loved him first." Claire touched her shoulder gently. "Sarah, we need to sort this out. Legally, he's yours, but Tom has no one else, and Jasper doesn't want to leave his side. We tried to separate them last night, and Jasper panicked." He howled. He scratched at the door. "He was inconsolable until we brought Tom back. So I need to ask you, what do you want to do?" And it was at that moment, kneeling on the cold floor of that kennel, with Jasper standing between her and the man he refused to abandon, that Sarah understood. Jasper didn't run from the fire. He didn't disappear because he wanted to. He went after those who also needed to be saved. Sarah stayed there on her knees looking at Jasper, and Jasper looked back with those deep eyes that always seemed to understand things she could never say aloud. She slowly reached out her hand, and this time Jasper took a step forward. He rested his snout on her palm, warm, familiar, and Sarah felt her chest tighten in a way that wasn't just pain. It was something else, something bigger. She looked at Tom, still sitting on the ground, his head down, his hands trembling in his lap. He looked so small there, so alone, and suddenly Sarah saw herself, 2 months ago, sitting on the sidewalk in front of the burning house, huddled up, broken, thinking she had lost everything. She took a deep breath and asked, her voice still trembling, "Tom, do you live alone?" He nodded slowly. "I do. Since my wife passed away 6 years ago. The children live abroad. They call sometimes at Christmas. But that's all. Me and loneliness. And now I don't even have my sight anymore." He gave a bitter, humorless smile. "When I gave Jasper to the shelter, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought he deserved more than a blind old man stumbling around the house. But the truth is I never got over it. I never stopped missing him. Every night I would hear the silence of the house and remember the way he used to lie at my feet while I watched TV. The way he would wait for me at the door when I arrived from somewhere. I didn't know it was possible to miss a dog so much." Sarah felt the tears welling up again. She knew exactly what he meant. Jasper licked her hand once more and then returned to Tom's side, laying his head in his lap. Tom ran his trembling hand over the dog's ears, and for the first time since Sarah had entered that kennel, he cried. He didn't make a sound. He just let the tears fall, wetting Jasper's fur. "I can't keep him," Tom said, his voice choked. "I know that. He's yours now. You took care of him. You gave him a life. I just wanted to thank you for him coming back, even if it was just for one night. I wanted him to know that I never wanted to abandon him." Claire was leaning against the kennel door, her arms crossed, her eyes red. Sarah saw that she was crying too, and it was there, in that impossible moment, that Sarah made a decision she didn't know she was capable of making. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, stood up from the floor and said, "Tom, give me your address." Tom frowned, confused, lifting his head toward her voice. "What?" Sarah repeated more firmly now. "Give me your address. I'll take you home. You and Jasper." Claire stepped forward, surprised. "Sarah, are you sure? You don't need to..." Sarah interrupted her. "I know I don't need to, but I want to." She looked at Jasper, then back at Tom. "I spent 2 months thinking I'd lost him. 2 months blaming myself, wondering why he went back into that fire. Now I know. He wasn't trying to abandon me. He was trying to save someone who also needed it. And if he did that, if he traveled miles alone, injured, to get to you, Then who am I to say he's wrong? She crouched down in front of Tom and gently touched his arm. Tom, you don't need to be alone. And neither do I. Jasper made that perfectly clear. Tom shook his head, confused, tears still streaming down his face. I don't understand. What are you saying? Sarah smiled, even knowing he couldn't see. I'm saying we're going to share him. You and I live 25 kilometers from here. It's not far. I can bring Jasper to visit you every week if you want. Or you can come to my house. We can have tea, talk. Jasper can stay with both of us. She paused, her voice breaking again. I lost my husband 4 years ago. My children don't care anymore. I thought Jasper was all I had. But maybe he wasn't just mine to begin with. Maybe he was ours. And maybe he's been trying to tell us that all along. Tom was silent for a long moment. And then he began to cry in a different way. It wasn't despair. It was relief. It was gratitude. He reached out his trembling hand towards Sarah, and she took it, firmly, warmly. Would you do that? For a stranger? Sarah squeezed his hand and said, You're not a stranger. Anyone Jasper loves like this is family. And I learned the hard way that family isn't about blood. It's about who refuses to leave you alone when everything falls apart. Claire wiped her eyes and smiled. She opened the kennel door completely and said, So let's sort out the paperwork. Sarah, the microchip is still in your name, but we can add Tom as a secondary contact. That way, if anything happens, you both have legal rights to it. Sarah nodded. Perfect. Let's do that. Tom was still holding her hand, as if afraid that if he let go, everything would disappear again. And Jasper, between the two, looked from one to the other, his tail wagging slowly, as if finally after so long he could rest. 2 hours later, Sarah was driving back to Wainuiomata, with Tom in the passenger seat and Jasper lying in the back seat, his head resting against the window, his eyes finally closed in peace. Tom spoke softly, almost to himself. I thought I was going to die alone that night. I prayed. I asked God to send someone, and he sent Jasper. Sarah gripped the steering wheel tighter, her throat constricted. He sent me Jasper too, that same night. She glanced in the rearview mirror at the sleeping dog behind her. I don't think we'll ever know how he managed it. How he knew you needed him at that exact moment. Tom smiled, his empty eyes staring ahead, but filled with something that seemed like faith. I think some animals understand things we can't even explain. They know when we're broken, and they don't give up on us, even when we give up on ourselves. Sarah nodded, even knowing he couldn't see. Jasper didn't give up on any of us, she whispered. And maybe now we don't have to give up on each other. When they arrived at Tom's house, Sarah helped him inside. The house was simple, small but clean. Tom sat in the old armchair in the living room, and Jasper immediately jumped into his lap, curling up as if he'd never left. Sarah stood in the doorway watching the two of them and felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, purpose, as if everything had happened for a reason. As if she had lost everything in that fire, but found something greater amidst the ashes. But the most unbelievable part of this story was yet to come. Sarah began visiting Tom 3 times a week. Every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, she would pick up Jasper, put him in the car, and drive to Wainuiomata. At first, she told herself it was just for the dog, that she was doing it because Jasper deserved it, because he had risked everything to save them both, and now she needed to honor that. But the truth she took weeks to admit aloud was that she was also going for herself. And for Tom. Because for the first time in 4 years since her husband died, she didn't feel invisible. She no longer woke up feeling like the day was just a list of empty hours to fill until she could sleep again. Now she woke up knowing that someone was waiting for her. 2 someones, actually. Tom always made tea when she arrived. He stumbled a bit in the kitchen but refused help. He said he needed to do things himself, otherwise he'd forget how. Sarah sat at the small kitchen table with Jasper lying at her feet, and the two talked. About everything. About Tom's wife, Margaret, who had died of a sudden heart attack while gardening. About Sarah's husband, David, who had battled cancer for 2 years before finally giving up. About the children who disappeared, the bills that remained, the silences that hurt more than any words. And about Jasper. Always about Jasper. About how he seemed to know when one of them was sad, when they needed company, when they needed space. About how, in some inexplicable way, He had brought together two people who would never have met otherwise. But it was on a Thursday afternoon, 6 weeks after that first visit to the shelter, that Sarah discovered the whole truth. She was helping Tom organize some old boxes in his storage room. He had asked for help because he could no longer see what he had stored there, and he wanted to donate what he no longer needed. Sarah opened a dusty cardboard box full of old documents, faded photos, and yellowed receipts. And it was at the bottom of that box, under a pile of electricity bills from 10 years ago, that she found it. A briefcase, old brown leather with a slightly broken zipper. She opened it. Inside were papers, veterinary certificates, photos of Jasper as a puppy, vaccination receipts, and in the middle of it all, a microchip registration certificate. Sarah read the date, 7 years ago. The owner's name, Thomas Caldwell. Address, Wainuiomata. Everything matched, but what made her heart stop was something else. A handwritten note, in the shaky handwriting of someone older, stapled to the certificate. It said, Jasper was trained as an emotional support and rescue dog by Margaret before she passed away. He is not an ordinary dog. He was taught to search for people in danger, to not give up until he finds them, to always return to those who need him. If something happens to me, please let him continue helping. That's what he was born for. Sarah felt her legs weaken. She clutched the folder with both hands and returned to the living room, where Tom sat in the armchair, Jasper beside him. Tom, she said, her voice trembling. Tom, I found something. He turned his head toward her. What? Sarah sat up on the sofa, still holding the folder. There's a note here, written by your wife, about Jasper. Tom was silent for a long moment, and then he sighed deeply, as if he had been carrying that weight for far too long. Margaret trained dogs, he said softly. It was her job. She worked with an organization that trained rescue and emotional support dogs for people with trauma. War veterans, survivors of violence, people who had lost everything and needed a reason to keep going. Jasper was the last dog she trained before she died. Sarah looked at Jasper, who lay with his head in Tom's lap, his eyes open, attentive, as if he understood every word. Tom continued, When Margaret died, I couldn't continue her work. I didn't know how, and then I lost my sight and everything fell apart. I thought the best thing I could do for Jasper was to let him go. Let him find someone who needed him more than I did. Someone he could save. He paused, his voice breaking. But I never imagined he would come back. That he would save me too. Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. She looked at the birth certificate in her hand, at Margaret's handwriting, at the date. And then she understood everything. Jasper didn't escape the fire by chance. He didn't find Tom by luck. He was trained for this. To search, to not give up, to always come back when someone needed him. Margaret had instilled that in him. She had taught him to be more than a pet. She had taught him to be a hero. And even after she was gone, even after Tom handed him over to the shelter, even after Sarah adopted him without knowing any of this, Jasper continued doing what he was born to do. To save, to heal, to unite. Sarah wiped her face and said, her voice firm now, Tom, I think we need to do something. He raised his head, confused. What? She stood up, still holding the folder. We need to continue Margaret's work. Jasper isn't just ours. He's bigger than that. He was made to help people. And if he managed to save us, managed to unite us, imagine how many other people he can help too. Tom was silent. And then slowly he smiled. The first genuine smile Sarah had seen on his face since they met. Are you saying we should train other dogs? She nodded, even knowing he couldn't see. Exactly. I can help. I have time. You have the knowledge Margaret passed on to you. And Jasper can be the example. We can do this together. And that's how, 4 months later, Sarah and Tom opened a small emotional rescue dog training program in Wainuiomata. Volunteer, non-profit, focused on people who had lost everything and needed a reason to start over. They called the program Margaret's Legacy, and Jasper, the dog who saved 2 broken hearts in the same night, became the ambassador, the teacher, the living symbol that true love never abandons anyone, not even when the world is on fire. Sarah still lived in the rented house near Wellington. Tom still lived alone in Wainuiomata. But now they weren't alone anymore. They had each other. They had Jasper. They had purpose. And every time Sarah drove to Tom's house with Jasper in the back seat, She looked in the rearview mirror and whispered, "Thank you, boy. Thank you for not giving up on us." Jasper wagged his tail, his eyes shining in that way that always seemed prophetic, as if he knew from the beginning that everything would be all right, as if he always knew that family isn't about who you lose, it's about who you find in the ashes. Because in the end, what Jasper taught Sarah and Tom was simple. True love doesn't need to choose. It just needs to be present. It needs to come back. It needs to save, even if it means going through fire, even if it means disappearing for weeks, even if it means uniting two strangers who would never have met otherwise. Jasper wasn't just a dog. He was living proof that God, or the universe, or destiny, whatever name you want to give it, never abandons those who truly need it. He just sends help in ways we don't always understand immediately. Sometimes the help has 4 paws, a wet nose, and a heart too big to fit in just one body. And if this story touched your heart, if you've ever lost someone and felt like you'd never recover, if you've ever had a pet that saved you in a way no one else could, then subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, leave a like below, comment on what this story reminded you of, and share this video with someone who needs to feel they're not alone today. Because just like Jasper didn't give up on Sarah and Tom, we don't give up on you. And sometimes, the story you need to hear most is the one that reminds you that love continues. Always. Even when everything seems lost.